I stood at the grand entrance of the wedding hall, my old fingers clutching the carefully wrapped gift I had spent weeks choosing for my grandson, and felt the cool evening breeze brush against my weathered face like a gentle reminder of all the years that had passed. The building before me was magnificent, draped in white silk and golden lights that twinkled like captured stars, and I could hear the soft melody of violin music drifting through the open doors, mixing with the laughter of guests I couldn't yet see. My heart swelled with a bittersweet mixture of joy and longing, because this was Marcus's wedding day, my beloved grandson, the boy I had raised when his mother, my daughter Sarah, had passed away so suddenly all those years ago. I smoothed down my best dress, the navy blue one with the pearl buttons that I had bought specifically for this occasion, and walked slowly toward the reception desk where a young woman with a bright smile stood checking names on a tablet. "Good evening," I said softly, my voice carrying the tremor of age and excitement. "I'm Eleanor Matthews, the grandmother of the groom." The young woman's fingers moved swiftly across the screen, her smile never wavering as she scrolled through what I assumed was a long list of guests. Then she paused, her brow furrowing slightly, and she scrolled again, slower this time. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice apologetic but professional, "I don't see your name on the guest list." I felt a small flutter of confusion in my chest, like a bird suddenly caged. "There must be some mistake," I replied gently. "I'm Marcus's grandmother. I practically raised him." The receptionist looked genuinely sympathetic as she called over another staff member, and together they searched again while I stood there, the gift growing heavier in my hands with each passing second. That's when I heard her laugh. It was a sound I had learned to recognize over the past 2 years, ever since Marcus had brought home Vanessa, his bride-to-be, a laugh that always seemed to carry an edge sharper than glass. She appeared from around a corner, stunning in her pre-ceremony dress, her dark hair swept up elegantly, her eyes bright with something that wasn't quite kindness. "Oh, Eleanor," she said, drawing out my name as if it were a burden to speak it, "didn't Marcus tell you?" She glided closer, and I caught the scent of her expensive perfume, something floral and overwhelming. "Tell me what, dear?" I asked, though already a cold weight was settling in my stomach, heavy as stone. Vanessa tilted her head, that smile still playing on her red lips, and said with mock sweetness, "This is a small, intimate ceremony. We had to be very selective about the guest list. Only immediate family, you understand." She paused, letting those words hang in the air like smoke. Immediate family. I felt the floor shift beneath my feet, though I knew it was only my world tilting on its axis. "But I am immediate family," I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. "I raised Marcus after Sarah died. I was there for his first day of school, his first heartbreak, his graduation. I sat with him in hospitals, I taught him to drive." Vanessa cut me off with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. Yes, we all know you were very involved," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "but Marcus and I discussed this at length. His mother is gone, and his father, well, James remarried and has his new family. We wanted to keep things simple. Besides," she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout, "Marcus agreed that it was time for him to focus on his future, not dwell on the past. You understand, don't you? You're the past, Eleanor." The words struck me like physical blows, each one finding a tender place in my heart that had already been bruised by years of loving too much, giving too freely. I looked past Vanessa into the glittering hall, searching for a glimpse of Marcus, my Marcus, the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who called me his best friend, who promised me just 5 years ago that I would always have a place in his life. "Where is he?" I managed to ask, my voice stronger now, fueled by something between hurt and desperate hope. "Where is my grandson?" Vanessa's smile faded into something harder. "He's preparing for the ceremony. And honestly, Eleanor, it would be better if you just left. Don't make this difficult. Don't make him feel guilty on his wedding day." She turned as if to leave, then looked back over her shoulder. "He left an envelope for you at the front desk. Consider it his goodbye gift." I stood there in that magnificent entrance, surrounded by beauty that suddenly felt hollow and cold, and watched Vanessa disappear into the warm glow of the celebration. The receptionist awkwardly handed me a cream-colored envelope, her eyes full of pity that made everything worse. My fingers shook as I opened it, and inside was a check, a generous one by most standards, and a brief note in Marcus's familiar handwriting. "Grandma, thank you for everything. Use this to enjoy your retirement. I think it's best if we have some space for a while. Vanessa and I need to build our own life. I hope you understand. Love, Marcus." Love. That word sat on the page like a lie, and I felt something break inside me that I knew would never fully heal. I had given him everything, sacrificed my own retirement dreams, turned down opportunities to travel and live freely, all to ensure he had a stable, loving home after his mother died. And this was my reward, a check and a polite dismissal, engineered by a woman who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenient relic. I folded the note carefully, placed it back in the envelope along with the check, and set it on the reception desk. "Please give this back to Marcus," I said quietly, my dignity the only thing I had left to hold on to. "Tell him his grandmother doesn't need payment for love." I turned and walked out of that wedding hall, my gift still in my hands, my heart heavy with a grief that felt ancient and new all at once. The night air was cooler now, and I could hear the celebration beginning inside, the clink of glasses, the rise of joyful voices, a world that had decided I no longer belonged in it. I drove home in silence, my old car rattling on familiar streets, and when I finally reached my small house, the one filled with photographs of Marcus at every age, I sat in my favorite chair and let myself cry for the first time in years. The months that followed were a strange kind of quiet. I heard nothing from Marcus, though I learned through distant relatives that the wedding had been beautiful, that the couple had honeymooned in Italy, that they had bought a house in the suburbs. I tried to fill my days with the things I had always postponed. I joined a book club, volunteered at the local library, took watercolor painting classes at the community center. I made new friends, women my age who had their own stories of children who had drifted away, of families that had fractured under the weight of modern life. They were kind and understanding, but at night, alone in my house, I still felt the echo of Marcus's absence like a phantom limb. I kept his room exactly as he had left it years ago, unable to pack away the baseball trophies, the school projects, the framed drawings he had made me for Mother's Day even though I wasn't technically his mother. I was just Grandma, just Eleanor, just the past. 1 year turned into 2, and I began to accept that perhaps this was simply how things would be. Perhaps I had loved too fiercely, held on too tightly, and in doing so had made it necessary for Marcus to cut the cord completely in order to become his own man. I tried to forgive him, tried to understand that Vanessa had whispered poison into his ear with practiced skill, but forgiveness is a strange landscape to navigate when you're walking it alone. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in October, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was another telemarketer, but something made me pick up. "Eleanor." The voice was male, young, and shaking. "Grandma, it's Marcus." I sat down heavily on my couch, my hand pressed against my chest where my heart had suddenly begun racing. "Marcus," I breathed, and 1,000 questions fought to escape my lips, but I held them back, waiting. "I need to see you," he said, and I could hear tears in his voice, raw and unguarded. "Can I come over? Please?" 20 minutes later, he was standing on my doorstep, and I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost weight, his face was pale and drawn, and his eyes, those eyes that used to sparkle with mischief and joy, were rimmed with red and hollowed with something that looked like suffering. I opened the door wider without a word, and he stepped inside, into the home he had once called his sanctuary, and immediately broke down. He collapsed into my arms the way he used to when he was a child, and I held him while he sobbed, my own tears falling silently into his hair. When he could finally speak, the story poured out of him in broken fragments. "Vanessa had changed the moment the wedding was over," he said. The sweet, attentive woman he thought he had married revealed herself to be controlling, manipulative, and cruel. She had isolated him from his friends, monitored his every move, belittled him constantly, and when he finally tried to stand up to her, she had laughed and told him he was weak, just like his dead mother and his pathetic grandmother who couldn't take a hint. "She said terrible things about you," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "And I let her. Grandma, I let her convince me that you were trying to control my life, that you were possessive and overbearing. I believed her lies because I was so desperate to make my marriage work. But she never loved me. She loved the idea of me, the doctor with good prospects and family money. When she found out that most of that money had gone to your care and my education, that there wasn't some massive inheritance waiting, she started an affair with my colleague. I held him tighter, this broken boy who had once been so full of light. I'm divorcing her, he continued, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I've spent 2 years of my life realizing what I threw away. You were the only person who ever loved me unconditionally, who sacrificed everything for me, and I repaid you by letting a cruel woman erase you from my life. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Grandma. I don't deserve anything from you. But I had to come here and tell you that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His words hung in the air of my small living room, and I felt the weight of those 2 years of silence, of hurt, of unanswered questions. Part of me wanted to tell him how much he had wounded me, how many nights I had cried myself to sleep wondering what I had done wrong, how I had questioned every choice I made in raising him. But when I looked at his face, ravaged by genuine remorse and pain, I saw not the man who had abandoned me, but the little boy who had once asked me if heaven was real because he wanted to know if his mother could still see him. Marcus, I said softly, cupping his face in my weathered hands, I forgave you the moment you walked away from me at that wedding hall. Not because what you did was right, but because that's what love is. Real love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. It doesn't demand payment or hold grudges. It simply is, even when it hurts, even when it's rejected. He sobbed harder, and I continued, you made a mistake. A terrible, painful mistake that cost us both precious time. But you're here now, and you're facing what you've done, and that takes more courage than most people ever muster. I will always be your grandmother, Marcus. Always. Nothing Vanessa said or did can change that, and nothing you did can erase the love I have for you. It's not conditional. It never was. We sat together on that couch for hours, talking and crying and beginning the slow, delicate process of rebuilding what had been shattered. He told me everything about his failed marriage, about the manipulation and gaslighting, about how he had lost himself completely. I listened, offered what wisdom my years had given me, and slowly, carefully, we found our way back to each other. In the months that followed, Marcus began the difficult work of healing. He moved back into his old room temporarily while his divorce was finalized, and I watched him rediscover himself, piece by painful piece. He started therapy, reconnected with old friends, and slowly the light began to return to his eyes. We established new boundaries and new understandings, both of us acknowledging that our relationship needed to evolve into something healthier, where he could be independent without abandoning those who loved him. I learned to give him space while still remaining present, and he learned that asking for help wasn't weakness but wisdom. Vanessa fought the divorce viciously, trying to extract as much money as possible, spreading vicious rumors about Marcus, but in the end, truth has a way of revealing itself, and she left his life as suddenly as she had entered it, moving on to her next victim with barely a backward glance. On the evening his divorce was finalized, Marcus and I sat on my back porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose, and he said something I will carry with me for the rest of my days. You know what the cruelest part was, Grandma? When Vanessa laughed at me at that wedding hall reception, when she told me I was nothing but the past, I actually believed her for a moment. I let myself believe that moving forward meant burning down everything behind me. But I was wrong. You're not my past. You're my foundation. You're the reason I can stand at all, and I almost destroyed the most important relationship in my life because I was too proud and too foolish to see what was right in front of me. He took my hand, his grip strong and steady. I can't give you back those 2 years. I can't undo the pain. But I can promise you that I will never take you for granted again. And when I get married again someday, if I'm lucky enough to find real love, you'll be standing right beside me, because no celebration of my life is complete without the woman who made my life possible. Now, as I sit here in my favorite chair with the evening light streaming through my windows, I think about that terrible night at the wedding hall, about the bitter truth I learned when my own grandson allowed me to be erased from his most important day. The truth was painful and sharp, that love, no matter how deep or sacrificial, can be dismissed and discarded by those we cherish most, that we can give everything and still be deemed not enough, that the world is full of people who will poison wells and turn hearts to stone for their own selfish purposes. But I also learned another truth, one that took longer to reveal itself but was far more powerful, that real love, tested by fire and rejection, can survive even the deepest wounds, that redemption is possible when someone has the courage to face their failures, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give is forgiveness when it's least deserved but most needed. Marcus and I will never get back those 2 lost years, and the scar from that abandonment will always remain tender to the touch, but we have today, and we have tomorrow, and we have the hard-won wisdom that comes from nearly losing everything that matters. And perhaps, in the end, that bitter truth I discovered that night was actually a gift in disguise, because it stripped away all pretense and illusion and forced both of us to confront what love really means when everything else is taken away, leaving only the choice to forgive or to forever carry the weight of what was broken. And I chose forgiveness, not because it was easy, but because some bonds, once forged in sacrifice and sealed with years of devotion, cannot be truly severed no matter how sharp the blade, and in that choosing, I discovered that the love of a grandmother is perhaps the closest thing to eternal that we mortals ever know.